And so we've seen interest rates, obviously, over the past 4 years, they've risen. What steps are being taken to lower the burden of housing costs? Because like you said, there's disparities in it. We can go all the way back to the GI Bill when we talk about the creation of generational wealth throughout communities. It's kind of missed us. So what is being done now from your side?
We know that home ownership is probably the most effective way to build intergenerational wealth. And it's a fact. Think about it in this context. As a parent then, as a homeowner, if you have some equity in your home, you can say to your child, don't take out the loan. I'll take out some of the equity to help you pay for tuition so that you don't graduate with extraordinary student loan debt. And so that when you graduate, you can do your dream job and not worry about those hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and you can go on and prosper. As a homeowner, if your child says to you, I want to start a business, I've got a great idea, and you as a parent can say, let me take out some equity to give you some startup capital. Intergenerational wealth.
Kamala Harris has been a vocal advocate for affordable housing throughout her political career. With the 2025 housing market expected to face significant challenges, Harris has outlined a detailed plan to address affordability, increase supply, and tackle homelessness head-on. Today, I will break down her plan and what it means for the future of the United States housing market. But first, let's understand how we got here.
America's housing crisis is keeping potential homebuyers on the sidelines. A lot of people feel like the American dream is out of reach, but a lot of experts say, hey, you still got to buy.
New data shows a growing portion of the U.S. is becoming unaffordable for people looking to buy a home.
As we head into 2025, the U.S. housing market is in trouble. Over the past 4 years, home prices have soared, with the median home price rising by 40%. Cities like San Francisco, Austin, and Miami have seen their housing costs skyrocket, while rents in many urban areas have increased as high as nearly 50%. For millions of families, owning a home or even affording rent has become an uphill battle. But it's not just about high home prices. Renters are feeling the pinch as well. To fully understand how bad this problem is, it is helpful to know that HUD says nearly 7.5 million low-income households spend more than half of their income on housing. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition reports that the country faces a shortage of almost 7.3 million affordable rental homes. This is the crisis Kamala Harris aims to tackle head-on in her 2025 housing plan, with a multi-pronged approach. Her strategy begins with the fundamental issue, increasing the housing supply. Harris knows that to address housing affordability, increasing the supply of affordable homes is essential. She's building on the momentum from the Biden administration's efforts, which injected $10 billion into affordable housing as a part of the American Rescue Plan. But Harris's proposal is far more ambitious. Her 2025 housing plan calls for an additional $50 billion to be invested over the next 5 years, with the goal of constructing at least 3 million new affordable units by 2030. Now you might wonder, why focus on new construction? Well, states like California have shown that big investments in affordable housing can really pay off. In 2018, California passed a $4 billion housing bond, and since then, it has funded over 25,000 affordable units. Harris's plan takes this success and scales it up to a national level. To further boost the affordable housing supply, Harris is also calling for the expansion of the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, which has helped build over 3 million affordable housing units since its inception. Doubling the LIHTC program will incentivize developers to build affordable homes in high-cost areas where demand is highest. But Harris's housing plan doesn't stop at tax incentives. She's targeting another critical issue that has long been a bottleneck in the housing market: zoning regulations. By offering financial incentives to cities that reform restrictive zoning laws, Harris hopes to encourage development in areas where affordable housing is sorely lacking. This zoning reform is needed for unlocking new areas for construction, especially in urban centers where housing shortages are at their worst. While increasing the supply of affordable housing is a key part of the solution, it is not enough on its own. Harris recognizes that even if more homes are built, millions of Americans are still struggling with skyrocketing rents. In cities like LA and New York, where the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment can now exceed $2,500 per month, families are being priced out of their homes. The question is, how do you protect renters while new housing is being built? Harris's plan addresses this with a focus on rent control and tenant protections. And this is just one of the most controversial aspects of Harris's plan. Her proposal includes incentives for states and municipalities to adopt stronger rent control measures, capping rent increases at no more than 3% per year or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower. This isn't just an idea Harris pulled out of thin air. In fact, states like Oregon have already seen some success with statewide rent control, which they implemented in 2019. Harris wants to replicate these efforts on a national scale, providing relief to millions of renters who are currently facing unsustainable rent hikes. Opponents of rent control argue that it could stifle new construction, but supporters point to cities like New York and San Francisco, where rent control has helped millions of tenants keep their homes in high-cost areas. Still, Harris knows that rent control alone won't solve this issue, which is why she's also proposing the creation of a $10 billion tenant protection fund. This fund would provide legal assistance for tenants facing eviction and emergency rental assistance for those hit by financial hardships. Now, protecting renters is one part of the equation, but what about helping them become homeowners? For decades, home ownership has been one of the main ways Americans build wealth. Yet in 2024, the dream of home ownership is slipping away from many. The median home price has climbed to over $416,000, and rising mortgage rates, currently around 7%, are pricing out the first-time buyers. Harris is determined to make home ownership more accessible for working-class families. Her plan includes a down payment assistance program for first-time buyers, which would provide up to $25,000 in grants to help cover the down payment and closing costs. This is a significant increase from the $10,000 offered under Biden's plan. Harris said during a speech in Raleigh, North Carolina, "The price of housing has gone up. The size of down payments has gone up as well. Even if aspiring homeowners save for years, it's often still not enough. While we work on the housing shortage, my administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with a down payment on a new home." But Harris isn't stopping there. She also plans to expand the Federal Housing Administration's FHA loan program, allowing more buyers to qualify for low down payment loans, especially in high-cost markets like LA and New York. By increasing the loan limits for FHA-backed mortgages, Harris hopes to open the doors to home ownership for more Americans.
As we've already discussed, there have been biases and explicit laws and practices that have been in place over generations to exclude certain folks and communities from that opportunity to create that wealth.
Even with these initiatives, Harris understands that not all Americans face the same barriers to home ownership. There's a significant racial gap in home ownership rates, something Harris is determined to address. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the home ownership rate for white Americans is 74%, while it's just 44% for black Americans. Harris sees this as an urgent problem. The racial home ownership gap is not just a statistic. It's a reflection of decades of discriminatory policies, from redlining to unequal access to credit. Harris's plan tackles this issue head-on with a $20 billion fund designed to increase home ownership among minority communities. The plan includes down payment assistance, targeted mortgage subsidies, and credit counseling to help minority families overcome the barriers they face when trying to purchase a home. She's also calling for a stronger reinforcement of the Community Reinvestment Act, which requires banks to lend to underserved communities. Additionally, Harris wants to expand rent-to-own programs, which allow renters to gradually build equity in their homes. This would give minority families, who may not have the credit history to qualify for a traditional mortgage, a pathway to home ownership. While Harris's plan focuses on creating more affordable housing and helping renters become homeowners, she's also addressing one of the most pressing issues in America: homelessness. The U.S. is facing a homelessness crisis, with more than 580,000 people experiencing homelessness on any given night. Harris knows that addressing this issue is critical to her overall housing strategy. Harris's approach to homelessness is built on the Housing First model, which prioritizes providing permanent housing before addressing other issues like employment or addiction. Studies have shown that this approach can reduce chronic homelessness by up to 50%. In places like Houston, the Housing First model has reduced homelessness by 55% over the past decade. Harris wants to take this success nationwide, with the goal of cutting chronic homelessness in half by 2030. Her plan also includes $5 billion for mental health and addiction services, recognizing that nearly 1/3 of homeless individuals struggle with these issues. By combining housing with support services, Harris aims to break the cycle of homelessness and provide a path for stability to the country's most vulnerable. Housing isn't just about affordability, it's also about sustainability. Harris's plan aligns with the Biden administration's climate goals by promoting eco-friendly housing. The U.S. Green Building Council says that 40% of carbon dioxide emissions in the U.S. come from buildings. To address this, Harris is pushing for $10 billion in incentives for green construction, including energy-efficient appliances, solar panels, and sustainable materials. Harris's housing plan aims to create not just more affordable homes, but greener ones as well. These eco-friendly upgrades won't just reduce the environmental impact. They'll also lower utility costs for residents. According to the EPA, energy-efficient retrofits could reduce energy bills by up to 30%, which could be a game changer for low-income families. Harris is also pushing for $15 billion in funding to help low-income homeowners and landlords upgrade their homes with energy-efficient features. This could help make existing homes more affordable while reducing their carbon footprint. Now the main question is, can Harris's plan succeed? This housing plan is bold, ambitious, and covers nearly every aspect of the housing market, from affordability and rent control to home ownership, racial equality, homelessness, and sustainability. But as with any plan of this magnitude, its success hinges on navigating a deeply divided Congress. The cost of her plan, estimated at over $150 billion, will likely face stiff opposition from conservatives who argue that it's too expensive and could discourage private development. But Harris is optimistic, pointing to state-level successes and the growing urgency of the housing crisis as reasons why bold action is needed now. As we move into 2025, housing will remain a critical issue for millions of Americans. Harris's plan may not solve every problem, but it's a significant step towards making housing more affordable and accessible for all. What do you think of Kamala Harris's 2025 housing market plan? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.